Buonasera a tutti e benvenuti a questo appuntamento che è chiamato dialogo, ma di fatto io mi limiterò a porre delle questioni a Sherin Khankan, che è una ospite davvero speciale perché credo che le sue identità, e poi cercheremo di scoprirle anche via via questo appuntamento, parlino di una eccezionalità all'interno di una delle religioni di cui più si parla e di cui troppo spesso male si parla perché si sa poco. Sherin Khankan è anzitutto donna studiosa, perché è una sociologa e una filosofa che si occupa di Islam contemporaneo e in particolare di sufismo, ma è anche la presidente di una NGO che a Copenaghen in Danimarca si occupa di violenza sulle donne, quale che sia l'appartenenza culturale e religiosa di queste donne. E poi Sherin Khankan è anche la prima imam della Scandinavia, donna, che dirige la preghiera in una moschea, la moschea Maryam di Copenaghen. Quindi ecco, anche solo partendo da questa molteplicità di modi di stare al mondo e di identità che attraversano la sua vita, io credo che possiamo partire con un ascolto che è un ascolto di un'esperienza davvero sfaccettata. E quindi io partirei proprio dalla biografia personale. Credo che ascoltare qual è la tua vita, Sherin, qual è la tua storia, da chi sei nata, da dove e dove sei nata, sia il modo migliore per iniziare questo nostro appuntamento.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, and thank you for the invitation. And thank you, Maria, for the introduction. And thank you for posing the first question as a question about the family, because actually everything descends from the family. The family is one big lottery. We never know which family we are born into. Oh, I'll just wait 1 second. The family is like a lottery. We don't know and we don't ask which family we are born into. And I was born with a Christian Finnish mother and a Muslim Syrian father. My mother, she comes from Finland, from a small village. It's called Mahlu. You won't be able to identify it on any map. She has 7 sisters and brothers. Actually, my cousin is sitting here also. And when she was 21 years old, she was a nurse, and she couldn't find work in Finland, but in Denmark they were in need of nurses, so she came to Denmark as a Finnish immigrant. My father, he comes from Syria, from Damascus, the city. He has 5 sisters and brothers, and my grandfather, he used to call to prayer in one of the most beautiful mosques in the Middle East. It's the Umayyad Mosque. He lived in the old city, and he comes from a quite poor family. He used to sell socks and underwear in the street since he was a little child, and he was the only one who attended university. He studied Arabic literature, and he was also an activist, so he was writing against the brutal Hafiz al-Assad regime, and he went to prison, and when he came out, he fled to Copenhagen, to Denmark, where he met my mother. And we hear this story once a year when they have their anniversary day, the story about how they met. And my father, he tells us this is his narrative or his story, because parents always have a different narrative. You might know that as well. So he told us that the first time he saw my mother, he fell in love with her, and very soon he asked to marry her, but she said no, thank you. But they married very soon after, and they're still married today. So my father, to me, he is like a feminist icon. He always raised the women in our family. I mean, he always served the women in our family, me and my sister and my mother. And he used to tell me that the perfect man is a woman. It's a quotation from Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi is the father of Sufism, one of the founders of Sufism, which is the spiritual path within Islam. And religion was never a problem in my family. We had the freedom to choose our religion. Both my parents are spiritual in the way they approach religion. My father, he became a practicing Muslim 5 years ago only, when the war started in Syria and Bashar al-Assad started to slaughter his civil population. So in my family, religion was never a problem. We could go to the church with my mother. When we visited Finland, my father was a natural part of my mother's family, and he would naturally participate in any Christian tradition, be it Christmas or going to church or anything else. On the other hand, my mother, she would also freely participate in the rituals on my father's side. And when I married 13 years ago, she moved to Syria together with my father and spent her life there with my father. They came back when the war started, though, to Denmark. So the point of sharing this story with you is to tell you that it is possible to combine different religions and different cultures, and it is possible to value different ideas of what is valuable at the same time. It is possible to be a Muslim and a Democrat at the same time, and as a Muslim, you can go to the church, you can celebrate Christmas. This is a possibility. I do believe that if you have a spiritual approach to your religion, you will have a tendency to focus on the things that unite us as people. And this is why I find so much potential within any kind of spirituality, whether it be Muslim, Jewish, Christian, or Buddhism, or whatever spirituality it might be. When I became older, I knew that I wanted to study religion, and I did my thesis on Sufism and Islamic activism. And I moved to Syria and did my thesis there, and the first inspiration to the Maryam Mosque started actually in the east and not in the west. Because while I was sitting in one of the biggest centers for Sunni Islamic activism, I was thinking, what would happen if the Mufti, the grand leader of this mosque, what would happen if he was a woman? How would it sound? What would the khutbah, the talk, be like before the prayer? Would it make any difference? So the first inspirational thoughts came to me in the East more than 20 years ago, or 15 years ago. The reason why I think that the story of our family is interesting is because that the things that we experience in our childhood is important to a large extent to the people we become. And the way we see our parents treat each other is also important at some extent. How does my father love my mother? How did my mother love my father? What were we told as children? Were we told that we could become anything, that anything is possible? What were my father's, what did he tell me about women's rights? What did my mother tell me about women's rights? All these questions are essential. And I do believe that because of this fundament, because I was always told that you can be anything you want to be, I think that the fundament was laid to the things that I do today. But later on in my life, I had my share of sorrow, because I do believe that we all get our share of sadness, sorrow, and happiness. Later on, I had my own personal experiences with patriarchal structures, with mental violence, and because I had these personal experiences, I also believe that these experiences laid the fundament for the things that I do today. And I have a personal experience with everything that I do in my life. Today, I'm the mother of 4 small children, and Sorry for making such a long answer. But I would like to quote one of my favorite poets for you. He's a Lebanese poet, and his name is Khalil Gibran, and he said that your children are not your children. Your children are sons of daughters of longing to be themselves. They are with you, but they do not belong to you. And you can give them your love, but you can never give them your thoughts, because they have their own thoughts and their own feelings and their own souls. And you are not able to visit the thoughts of your children or the souls of your children, not even in your dreams. So do not try to create your children in your own image. And I could go on because the poet, it continues, but it really sums up what I believe is important in everything that I do. How can we make change without indoctrinating? Is it possible to believe without seeing your own religion as the only truth? Are you able to love without indoctrinating? So how do we balance as people? I think this is the crucial question. I just want to say that maybe you didn't know this, but you are not allowed to clap in front of a Muslim, because it's only God who deserves our honor. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke. You can clap.
Non siamo molto abituati all'umorismo legato alle religioni. Credo che la tua storia sia una storia senza barriere geografiche, senza barriere culturali, che però in questo momento si esprime a pieno dentro una cultura religiosa, che è quella dell'Islam. E il tuo modo, il modo delle persone che vivono questa esperienza musulmana ci dicono di un particolare tipo di Islam, che è un Islam europeo, nel senso che credo che il fatto che tu abiti e tu abbia inaugurato questa esperienza di moschea al femminile in un paese come la Danimarca, in una città come Copenaghen, non sia casuale. Allora vorrei ripartire proprio di lì e chiederti di raccontarci, dopo l'ispirazione avvenuta nella parte est del mondo, come hai deciso anche concretamente di aprire questa moschea che, avendola visitata, è veramente un esempio incredibile di luogo invisibile dentro una città così vivace come Copenaghen. Quindi come è iniziata questa esperienza? E dico anche una cosa che a me ha colpito: tu sei la prima imam, sei colei che guida la preghiera, ma non sei l'unica, perché ci sono altre donne imam assieme a te, molto diverse da te. E quindi ecco, sentire un po' il racconto di questa storia ci aiuta a capire meglio e forse anche a sgomberare la testa da stereotipi che abbiamo tutti.
Thank you so much for the question. More than 15 years ago, I got inspired to start the first mosque with the female imams in Denmark. I started an association, a movement called Critical Muslims in Denmark. It was the first movement, a Muslim organization with female Muslim leadership. We only had female spokespersons. We were advocating for a separation between religion and politics. We were arguing for the necessity of combining religion with secularism, and we believe that secularism can be defined as a dialogue between religion and politics. So I do not define secularism as non-religiosity, because I'm a practicing Muslim. I believe that religion has something to offer our modern world, but as long as it's not as indoctrination, but as a dialogue, as an inspirational force. So in Critical Muslims, we were also arguing for the necessity of Islamic pluralism. So it was the first organization that opened the doors for every Muslim, whether they were Sunni, Shia, Ahmadi, Alawi, all directions within Islam were welcome in our mosque. And I wrote my first article on female imams. And at that time, I didn't use the term imam, I used the term khatiba. Khatiba is a woman who gives the khutbah, and the khutbah is the sermon before the prayer. So I wasn't that brave 15 years ago. I knew that it was dangerous to use the term imam, so I used the term khatiba. Then I also came home from Syria, and I was looking for a community, and I couldn't find a community. I felt homeless. And the existing mosque communities in Denmark never inspired me, or I never felt at home when I visited the mosque, so I rarely visited the mosques. I thought they were extremely male-dominated, and they are. It's a fact that most religious institutions of today have a patriarchal structure. And it was only recently in 1948 that we had the first female priest ordained within the Protestant church in Denmark. And now last year we had the first female imams in Scandinavia in the Maryam Mosque. In 2015 I went to Istanbul, so it was in August 2001 that I founded Critical Muslims, and it took me 15 years to get where we are today. So it was a journey that lasted for 15 years, and many things happened during those 15 years. But last year, or in 2016, I felt that time was ready for a mosque with female imams. And I remember I went to Istanbul for a conference, and there were male imams from the whole Middle East, and I was invited as a sociologist of religion, and together with another scholar, a female scholar from Copenhagen University, and the rest of the participants were men, as always, when you're at conferences. Unless it's like a women's issue, it's primarily mostly men who are in the panel. Maybe it's an exception here in Italy, I don't know. I haven't seen the list of all the panelists, but so I had a speech written, and I threw it apart, and I gave a different speech about female imams. And the people who invited me were in shock because they didn't know this, because they want you to send the speeches before. And but actually the male imams, they were quite quiet. And I think they were thinking it's never going to happen anyway, so we don't have to make a deal out of it. And I remember there was a male imam who said, he was from Lebanon, he said, "Female imams, interesting but strange. Interesting but strange." He said it 3 times. And there was another imam who whispered in my ears in the break. He said, "Sherin, you don't have to ask for permission to build a mosque with female imams, and you will not get the permission. Power is not something you ask for permission to take. It's something that you just take." And yeah, I thought about this. And when I came home to Copenhagen, I wrote an article about the vision and the ambition for a female mosque, or for a mosque with female imams. And 2 weeks later, I had a phone call from a very generous donator. His name is Jakob Holt. He's a photographer. And he told me that I have a building in central Copenhagen, in one of the most fashionable walking streets in Copenhagen. And the Spanish consulate, they're moving out next month. And I would like to donate this building for the Maryam Mosque. I remember I was sitting in the metro, and I was totally shocked, and I thought to myself, oh no, now it's happening, and now there is no way back. I thought that I would spend the next 5 years seeking funding to build the mosque, and now the mosque was in my hands. So when you develop from a movement into an institution, you become so much more powerful. Why? Because you are an institution, and you are able to perform Friday prayer, Islamic marriages, Islamic spiritual care. So it becomes systematically, you are at a systematically level able to influence people through your talks, the khutbah, the Friday sermons, and so forth. So this is how it started. And I remember that we were a small group of people, only 16 people, and then we slowly grew into a movement. And today, as Maria said, we are 5 female imams in the mosque. Some of the women, they don't like the term imam or imama. They call themselves the one who leads the prayer, or a spiritual spokesperson, or a murshidat. And some of the women, they feel comfortable with the term imam and have accepted it. Because we have normalized patriarchal structures for so many years, so we cannot even think of an imam as a woman. Like we don't have any female leaders or priests within a Catholicism. So to many Muslims, it was something new, even though historically and Islamically, it's not something new. As a female imam, I often get the question, how do you receive your legitimacy? Who gives you the right to call yourself an imam? Because you are only a sociologist of religion. You are specialized in Islam. You have written 3 books on Islam in Europe. You are a cognitive psychotherapist, but who gives you the right to call you an imam? So it's like you need to have, people, they question your legitimacy because you're a woman. And we knew this, because this is how it functions. This is how people keep the power balance intact. So when it comes to the question of legitimacy, I believe there are 3 themes that are important. The first theme is the question of knowledge. There's the question of need, and there's the question of Islamic theology. So let me start with Islamic theology. What does Islam say about female imams? Is this an invention? Is it a reformation? Are we doing something new? Is this possible? Is this compatible with Islamic tradition and Islamic theology? The question is yes, it is a part of Islamic tradition. It is a part of Islamic theology, and it is possible to be a female imam. Historically, the first house mosque in the Islamic civilization was the house mosque of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It was the house mosque in Medina. And before the mosques became institutionalized, we had different house mosques in Medina. And in the house mosque of the Prophet Muhammad, 2 women were leading the prayers for other women. It was Aisha and Salama. So we have evidence, Islamic evidence, that this was a part of the Islamic tradition at the time of the Prophet in his own house mosque. There is also a story, a hadith. Hadith is the written narrative on what we believe the Prophet said and did. So there is also a hadith where the Prophet, he goes and he visited the house mosque of a very famous woman called Waraka. She was famous because she was able to recite the Quran very beautifully, and she was knowledgeable within Islam. And she wanted to go to war with the Prophet and take care of the people who were injured. But he told her to stay and lead the prayer for her community. And so there are narratives on women being warriors, teachers, and also female imams. What happened was that when the Prophet died, we had the 4 caliphs, and under the second caliphate, it was Omar, he was the second caliph, he forbade women to lead the prayer for other women. So when Muslims in 2017 are defending patriarchal structures, they are actually not following in the footsteps of the Prophet Muhammad, who they claim to love, but they are actually following in the footsteps of Omar, the second caliph, who had a very bad reputation when it came to his view on women. He was very discriminatory when it came to women and women's rights. And of course, when I speak to a Muslim audience, I underline these truths which are hidden or they have not been talked about openly. The source behind these stories are Ibn Sa'd. He's one of my sources. He's a historian from the 18th century. He wrote a biographical lexicon. It consists of 8 volumes. 7 of the volumes are about the men at the time of the Prophet, but the 8th volume is only about the women at the time of the Prophet. And this is very interesting. So in this 8th volume, you get a totally other perception of how things were. And you get an impression of how varied roles the women had at the time of the Prophet. The Quran doesn't say anything about female imams. So it doesn't say that you can be a female imam, it doesn't say that you can't. But the Quran says something about equality. And it is stated in the Quran that men and women are equal and we have equal possibilities and equal rights. And we should pursue knowledge and we should spread knowledge and disseminate the Islamic message even if we have to go to China. This is a very famous hadith also. So we have the law schools. We have 3 out of 4 law schools. They accept female imams leading the prayer for other women. There is a very famous Islamic authority, his name is Tabari. He accepts female imams leading the prayer for both men and women, and he's accepted by all Muslims. So you will find evidence within Islamic theology and tradition and history that defends the idea or concept of female imams. So it's not a new phenomenon. It's just not very well known among Muslims. So this was a little bit about legitimacy when it comes to Islamic theology. Then there's the question of need. Do we have a need for female imams? Is this necessary? And I do believe it's necessary. First of all, because the one who has knowledge should be able to disseminate the Islamic message. But I also do believe that now I have been functioning as a female imam for 1 year, and I have performed, next Friday, I have performed 11 Islamic marriages. And people come to us not only from Denmark, but also from Sweden and Norway, because they want to get married by a female imam. I also did a couple of interreligious marriages between Muslim women and Christian men. And in the Quran, it is stated very clearly that a Muslim man, he can marry a Jew or a Christian or people from the book. But it is not stated clearly that a Muslim woman can marry a Christian or a Jew or people from the book. So because it's not stated clearly, Muslim scholars and imams and authorities within the Islamic tradition, they have made the concept, or they agreed upon the fact that Muslim women cannot marry others than Muslim men. But we believe that when it's not stated clearly in the Quran that she can't, it's not stated that she can't, but it's not stated that she can't, but it is stated in the Quran that both a man and a woman, they should find worshippers of God, sincere worshippers of God. So this is the theology that we cling to when we do interreligious marriages. But we also have to look at the realities. And as an imam, you're not only leading the prayer, you're not only giving the khutbah, the sermon, you also act as an Islamic spiritual care person, and people come to you with all sorts of problems and dilemmas. And one of the biggest dilemmas we are facing right now, not only in Denmark, but all over Europe and elsewhere, is the question of interreligious marriages. And I see young people fighting, suffering, because they are not allowed to marry the person they love and the person they chose. And even in cases where you see a deeply devotion and respect, and both families on both sides, they accept the marriage, you won't be able to find an imam who will give the couple an Islamic marriage and make it legal Islamically. So now they have the possibility, but it's still really a big topic. But I have identified 10 Muslim scholars around the world who support interreligious marriages. I know of imams other places in the world, Imam Faisal in New York, in Indonesia and other places. I know of imams who do perform interreligious marriages, but it's not really officially known. So it's still something very controversial to many Muslims. We also established, as female imams, we also established a new Islamic marriage contract which gives the woman, Muslim woman, the right to divorce, to have an Islamic divorce. Today, as a woman, you are not able to give an Islamic divorce. So if you're not content in your marriage, if you're subjected to violence, mental violence, emotional abuse, or anything else, you cannot get your divorce. You can get the Danish divorce, or the Swedish, or the Norwegian, but you cannot obtain the Islamic divorce unless the husband tells you, I divorce you. And this is, of course, a problem, because we see women trapped in psychological marriages where they cannot continue their lives because the husband refuses, and they are not able to find an imam who will give them the Islamic divorce. Even in cases with severe violence towards the mother and children, they cannot obtain the divorce. So we have performed 4 Islamic divorces so far in the Maryam Mosque, and we still have a lot of women coming to us to seek for an Islamic divorce. In our marriage contract, polygamy is not an option. If mental or physical violence occurs, the marriage is annulled. And the woman also have the right over the children along with the man in case of a divorce. So these are some examples when it comes to the question of legitimacy and need. It's because Maria, she said I had to answer the questions like 15 minutes, but maybe it's too long. Is it too long? No? Okay. And I also do believe that women, we can offer something as female imams that men cannot offer. And it's because we have experiences with giving birth. And if you are a woman and there are so many sensitive issues, if you are in the middle of a divorce, if you have a child birth depression, if you lost a child, if you have been harassed or sexually abused, many women, they prefer to speak to a female imam instead of a male imam. So I believe that there is a need for female imams, not only when it comes to disseminating the Islamic message and giving new narratives on Islam, but also when it comes to the Islamic spiritual care part.
Grazie, credo che per affrontare dei temi così complessi 15 minuti sia il minimo necessario proprio per evitare di costruire saperi ipersuperficiali. Allora vorrei tornare ancora proprio sulla moschea, sul luogo della moschea. Un tratto peculiare di questa moschea, a differenza di altre, oltre al fatto che sia una moschea femminile, è il fatto che in qualche modo assomiglia molto alle moschee, tra virgolette, i luoghi di culto islamici che esistono in Italia. E cioè quello che mi ha stupito nel visitarla, Sherin ci ha detto, è dentro una delle vie più trafficate di shopping di Copenaghen, e quindi una moschea nascosta, non si vede dall'esterno, esattamente come non si vedono le 17 sale di preghiera musulmane che ci sono a Torino. Credo che chi è in questa sala non saprebbe assolutamente dove stanno tutte queste sale di preghiera. E però se ne è parlato tanto della moschea Mariam, soprattutto in Danimarca. Allora vorrei chiederti qual è stata la ricezione, cioè qual è stato l'atteggiamento sia del mondo musulmano danese, ma anche della società civile, come si dice, alla notizia dell'apertura, alla notizia delle attività? Sappiamo che l'Islam dappertutto, e come tutte le religioni, è al plurale, quindi ci sono componenti diverse, correnti diverse, posizioni più o meno progressiste, riformiste, tradizionaliste. Mi piacerebbe che ci dicessi come è stata accolta o non accolta, e se ha creato anche dei conflitti all'interno dell'Islam.
Thank you. Within the Islamic debate, one can identify three overall positions. And this is a categorical way of seeing it, but it still gives you an overview. There is the traditionalist position within Islam. There is the Islamist position, and you will find the more spiritual, modernist position. And the Maryam Mosque belong to the more progressive, spiritual, modernist position. I'm not saying that the traditionalists or the Islamists are not acting on modern premises. They are. Islamists, they are very modern. They reinterpret the Quran, and the traditionalists are so tired of the Islamists because they say that they just refute all tradition and reinterpret the Quran in a very political direction. They may make Islam into a political ideology. But these are three overall positions, and the traditionalist position is very widespread in Denmark and elsewhere. 99% of Danish mosques are traditionalist. They are traditionalist and they have a patriarchal structure. It's a fact. And there's nothing wrong about being traditionalist, but we wish to create an alternative. We wish to break through these patriarchal structures and give a different narrative on Islam. We would like to reintroduce Islamic spirituality, Islamic philosophy, and not a single male imam in Denmark visited our mosque or have blessed the mosque or congratulated the mosque or have, told women or men to go to the mosque, recommended the mosque. Some of the imams were opposing the mosque officially, saying that this is not possible, female imams is not a possibility, it's against Islamic theology. But it was very easy for us to refute these arguments because we can, as I told you, the story of the Prophet and what happened at the time of the Prophet. So these arguments were not valid for a very long time. They were refuted easily. I was told that I cannot be an imam because I have my period once a month. But I told them, luckily we have 5 female imams, so that's not really a problem to us because we have 5 now. But the opposition that we have met have been very moderate. And I do believe that the reason why it has been moderate is because when creating change, we are very sensitive and we try not to burn all the bridges behind us. Let me give you an example. When I had the ambition of starting a mosque, my vision was a mosque with men and women praying side by side, and male and female imams leading the prayer on shift. And we would pray together because I always worked against segregation. But in the group, that's the magical thing about creating something new from scratch, because we built a new Muslim Islamic faith community from scratch, from nothing. And that's the magical thing about creating a movement and an institution, is that people have different opinions, even within the same institution or movement. And this is what makes it democratic, and this is what makes it grow. And one of the other female imams, Salihah is her name, she's a convert. She stayed 8 years in Iraq. She's specialized, she teaches Arabic, and she has also written a book recently. She told me that I will only lead the prayer in the mosque and serve as an imama in the mosque if the prayer is exclusively for women, the Friday prayer. Because she knew that if we made a mixed Friday prayer, we would create chaos in Denmark. And people would oppose us and we would be criticized. because we don't have the same evidence for having mixed prayer, but when it's a Friday prayer only reserved for women, nobody can touch us. We are on safe, solid theological ground. Nobody can say anything. So we had to vote for it, and the majority voted for when on Fridays, it's only for women, 2 hours from 12 till 2, and then at 2 o'clock men can come and join all the activities, the Islamic meditation and the lectures and everything, but that we would reserve 2 hours only for women. And today I'm very happy about the decision. I can see that it was a wise decision, because when you want to create change, you have to do it slowly and wisely. And if you burn all the bridges behind you, you cannot be a build bridger. And our aim is to create change without creating chaos. And I think our legitimacy is high because we made this choice. Of course, we are opposed. I mean, the right-wing parties in Denmark, they call me a radical Islamist, imagine. And the Muslim call me also radical, and I'm opposed from everywhere, from every side. And I do believe that I'm doing something right when everybody is opposing me on all sides. But it also takes time to change, because when you change the structure, you are changing the power balance. And of course, men are not interested in losing their power or sharing their power, unfortunately, not all men. So it's also a matter of changing things slowly, and people have to get used to it. Last week, we had a historical visit from the Grand Imam from one of the third largest mosques in the world. It's the mosque in Indonesia. This Grand Imam, he has 200,000 Muslim visitors every Friday for the Friday prayer. So of course he's important. He came to our mosque last week with a delegation from Indonesia, scholars, professors, religious teachers, and he prayed inside our mosque, and he blessed the mosque, and he even quoted my favorite Sufi poet, philosopher, thinker, theologian. It's Ibn Arabi, the one my father always used to quote. Ibn Arabi, who said the perfect man is a woman. He actually wrote that on a piece of paper. He gave us a piece of paper where he had written that female imams is a possibility, and I bless this mosque, and I stand behind it. So this was historical to us, because it's a way of hiring our legitimacy.
Torno sulla componente con cui abbiamo iniziato, cioè le identità multiple che attraversano la tua vita, ma come la vita di tutti noi. Uno dei pensatori che da sempre ha un po' ispirato Biennale Democrazia, cioè uno dei grandi padri a cui ci siamo riferiti anche in altre passate edizioni, Amartya Sen. Amartya Sen in uno dei tanti suoi libri ragiona sul rapporto tra identità e violenza, provando a ragionare come il chiudere l'identità in una unica identità porta spesso al conflitto violento con l'altro e con gli altri, vale a dire, se io mi definisco soltanto come una imam, è chiaro che costruisco diversi avversari, nemici, in maniera molto più facile, anche molto più rapida, rispetto invece al fatto di definirmi una donna, una mamma, una figlia, una imam, ma anche una studiosa, ma anche un'attivista, eccetera, eccetera. Allora mi piacerebbe sapere qual è la tua opinione su questa potenzialità delle identità multiple, delle identità al plurale come antidoto contro la violenza, contro i fondamentalismi, perché la pluralità significa più facilmente legame, ponti, hai parlato di ponti, significa anche capacità di evitare la logica di io, tu, noi e gli altri, soprattutto in un mondo in cui gli altri sempre più facilmente sono identificati chiaramente come la tipologia Islam.
Thank you. It's a very interesting question. I used to I used to use the term global identities, and I see myself as a global identity. I was born between East and West, Christianity and Islam, country and city. And as a child always naturally longs for unity or for certainty. So when you're brought up with many different variations of the truth, of course it can be difficult and confusing because we seek unity. We want to be like everyone else. But when I grew older, I saw it as a blessing. Being able to travel mentally between different cultures, between different religions very easily, and having this flexible nature. So I do believe that, I totally agree that I do believe that the more flexible a nature you have, or the more flexible an identity you have, the more you are able to contain the global world that we live in. Because actually one of the biggest challenges that we are facing is the question of how are we going to live together in a world where one man's idea of a community is another man's political prison? Who has the right to define what should be considered universal values? Who has the right to define what should be considered a defining moment in history? Why did September 11 become a defining moment and not Srebrenica in 1995, where more than 10,000 young boys and men were killed because they were Muslims? So we have to question these narratives or these ideas of who has the right to define what and when. And I do believe that it's important to be flexible, and I really try to challenge the people within my community, the Muslims who believe that I have the truth. Being a Muslim is the only way to receive salvation. It's the only enlightened path to be on. This is of course not true, the truth. I do believe that there are many ways to the same spirit of love or God, or what divine spirit, or what people tend to call God. And we have to find our own path, and I do believe that, I mean, this is my struggle. I try to create change within my own Muslim community, and to show inside my community that it is possible to have a flexible identity and at the same time to be a faithful Muslim. That's not a contradiction. I would like to quote one of my inspirational sources. Her name is Rabia al-Adawiya. She died in 801. She's a Sufi saint. She's on the Sufi path. She laid the fundament for Sufism, which is the spiritual path within Islam. Rabia al-Adawiya, she said, "I carry a lamp with fire in one hand and a bottle of water in the other hand. With these two things I shall set fire to heaven, and I shall turn off hellfire, so that the people who claim to worship God or Allah, they can see the true light." And then she says, "God, if I worship you because I long for paradise, then please close the gates of paradise in front of me. And God, if I worship you because I fear hellfire, then let me burn in hellfire. But if I love you, God, for the sake of your mercy, then may your mercy and love be upon me." So what is it that she does, Rabia al-Adawiya? She takes the most ultimate, absolute pair of oppositions, heaven and hell, and then she deconstructs it. She's not saying that heaven and hell are not there. I mean, pairs of oppositions are existing. But the question is, or the point is, not to let all these, not to manipulate dichotomies in such a strong sense that we are not able to communicate or to see each other. And I do believe that she has something to offer our generation of Muslims and also non-Muslims, because she has this flexible identity, and she's introducing Sufism, the spiritual wisdom within Islam. And Sufism is actually, it's not a new religion. It's a part of the Islamic tradition. It's a part of Islamic theology. Sufism is about, it's the way you walk on the path. It's your inner state. It's listening to your heart. It's combining your rational approach to the Quran with your heart, with the heart approach. And it's always to look behind the rituals. Why do we do the things we do? What's the purpose? How can I call myself a believer of God if I do not value and appreciate the multiplicity that God has created? This is actually the meaning behind the prayer. We pray 5 times a day. That's the essence. Because when we put the head to the ground, it's submission. You try to forget about your own ego, your own private projects. You wash everything away from this life when you do the wudu, you know, the washing before the prayer. And you end your prayer by standing up and you turn your head and say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. It means peace be upon you. And you do that from side to side. So you greet your Muslim, Jewish, Christian, atheist, Hinduist, Buddhist brother or sister. This is the purpose. So the point is that you cannot claim to love God if you do not love the pluralism that God has created. It's like, I would also like to quote Rumi. How many here have heard of Rumi? 2, 3, oh, many. I'm really happy about that. Rumi is one of the greatest Islamic philosophers, and he's translated into any language. So if you want to know something about Islam, go to the library and read a book about Rumi. Rumi, he said, come, 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 whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living. It doesn't matter who you are, because our community is not a place for fear. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again. Yes.
Okay. I think we can open the floor to this. Sì, credo che ci siano ancora tante domande che io vorrei fare, però abbiamo previsto la possibilità di domande dal pubblico, quindi direi che è venuto il momento e se qualcuno vuole domandare qualche cosa che ha voglia di approfondire.
And there are no questions you can't ask. I would like to hear about all your prejudices. You have to, I mean, it's okay, you can ask any question, be it official or private.
Come dice un famoso regista italiano, nessuna domanda è mai imbarazzante, a volte le risposte lo sono, quindi vale qualunque domanda. Prego.
Buonasera a tutti. Riguardo suo marito, suoi figli, che religioni sono? Cosa fanno?
My husband, he's a doctor and a songwriter. He's not as progressive as I am, if I may say so. He's a Muslim. Actually, my father, he always told me, you can do anything you want to do. But there's just one thing you cannot do. When you choose your life partner, please don't come home with a man with Pakistani roots. Marry anyone else, but not a man with Pakistani roots. Because then we will be bound back to the Middle Ages, my father said. And of course, I fell in love with a man with Pakistani roots. So always the things that we fear the most, we will be confronted with. This is the tragic and magic thing about life. So he came home and asked for my hand, and his family didn't want him to marry me, so they kicked him out of his house. He was not, allowed to be in his house anymore because he wanted to marry this rebel. I'm Muslim, but I didn't have Pakistani roots, so we we have difficulties with the national identity. We have some families who are very patriarchal or traditionalist, and they want their sons and daughters to marry a person with the same national identity. But we married, and we survived, and we had 4 children. And our children, if you ask me, you will have one question. If you ask the father, you will have a different question. But now I'm here, so you will ask me. I cannot speak on behalf of him. But if you ask me, my children, they are free, and they can choose any religion they want to choose. I'm not here to influence my children. I'm here to try to be the best mother I can be, and I try to be a mother the way my mother were a mother to me. She never influenced me. I always ask her, how did you manage to raise us as you did? Because my cousin, she's here, and she's the daughter of my mother's sister, and she also moved to Copenhagen. So she's my witness that I can't remember that my mother, she hired her voice in front of us children or yelled at us at any time. And I think that's really a role model as a mother or a father. So, and her mother, she raised 8 children, and I asked her, how did she do that? And my mother said, she raised them without raising them. So again, the question is how to raise your children without raising them, without indoctrinating them, without telling them which direction to go, and to let them progress and in their own direction. I try to do that.
C'era qualcun altro? Prego.
Buonasera, grazie per la bellissima presentazione che ha fatto. Volevo chiedere dove possiamo leggere la voce dei musulmani sui media? Io sono sicura che lei è cosciente del fatto che sentiamo parlare moltissimo dei musulmani da non musulmani e ci sono anche molti pregiudizi che vengono scritti e raccontati. Dove troviamo invece la voce di chi parla in maniera diversa? Grazie.
I think if you search for Sufi literature or literature by modernist progressive scholars, Amina Wadud, she's a Islamic feminist, Muslim female scholar. She lives in New York. She also started, she led the first Friday prayer in New York back in 2005. There's the work of Fatima Menisi. There's the work of Rabia al-Adawiya, the woman I quoted, Ibn Arabi. He's a very famous scholar, and he wrote a lot of books also about Islamic feminism. Actually, my inspirational force is Sufism. Recently, I started to go to study Islamic feminist modern literature, but I found my inspiration in the Sufi literature. Ibn Arabi, he lived from 1165 till 1240, and he has written books on women's rights also within the Sufi literature. Shahin Sadr Ali, she's a professor of law. She comes from Pakistan. She gave lectures all over Europe and in Scandinavia. She has made an analysis of the Quran, and she found out that out of 6,000 verses in the Quran, only 6 verses could be interpreted as discriminatory against women, but they could also be interpreted differently. And she's giving these alternatives rereading or interpretations, which is very interesting to Muslims, because some of the oppression that we can see today in real life, it's somehow a consequence of illiteracy, ignorance, men having the power, or the patriarchal structures, patriarchal interpretation. So we have to work on different levels. But we also have to understand that we live in the West, and the educational system in the West is also selective, in the same way that the educational system in the Middle East is selective. Selective in the sense that, I studied philosophy at Copenhagen University, and I remember that I couldn't find even a small line or a chapter about Islamic philosophy and how it contributed to Western civilization. there were not a single sentence about Rumi or Ibn Arabi or all these great female and male scholars within, you know, the tradition. There was only a line about Muslims having interpreted, translated the works of Aristotle, but we did more than that. So we are not introduced to Islamic philosophy. We are not introduced to Islamic spirituality in the school, not even at a university level. But things are slowly changing. We have a board member in the Maryam Mosque. His name is Sa'id Jashi. He just became a PhD in Islamic philosophy, and he has written a couple of books about Islamic philosophy, and one of his books just entered the curriculum at Copenhagen University at the Faculty of Philosophy. So now it will change. The future generation of students, they will have a taste of Islamic philosophy, and this is how we can change things. We have a new generation of Muslims who are scholars, who are journalists, who are artists, politicians, and they are capable of writing new narratives. And even the Maryam Mosque, we are a small mosque. Maria, she came to the mosque. It's a small mosque, but sometimes a small mosque, a small community can do great things. And the story about the Maryam Mosque, it traveled from Denmark to Scandinavia, to Europe, to the Middle East, to China, and the story has been told again and again. So, and this is actually the greatest tool in confronting radical Islam. It's to create another counter-narrative or another narrative, introducing Islamic spirituality, introducing a different way of integrating yourself in European countries. And it's also a way of challenging the growing Islamophobia in the world. Because how can you claim that Islam is a suppressive religion when you can see Muslim women taking the lead, giving the khutbah, the sermon, leading the prayer, disseminating Islam? So we are challenging the growing, and this is also why the right-wing parties, they really want to see me killed. I mean, I had death threats from the right-wing parties, because progressive Muslims are a greater threat to Islamophobes than Islamists are. Why? Because we are capable of changing the concept of Islam. We are capable of changing the narrative. When I gave the first prayer in the mosque, the Friday prayer, I was preparing myself at home. I was taking on this galabia and my, this scarf. And my daughter, the youngest one, who's 5 years old, she was watching me admiringly, and her friend as well. Her friend she's Danish and non-Muslim, and she whispered into Halima's ears, "What is an imam, Halima? What is an imam?" She heard this word over and over again. And Halima, my daughter, she looked at her and she said very proudly that an imam is a woman who's doing great things. So it is possible to change the concept even in the mind of a 5-year-old child.
Lei ci ha parlato all'inizio che nella sua famiglia non ha avuto condizionamenti di sorta. Le posso chiedere come mai e poi ha abbracciato l'islamismo e non il cristianesimo, dal momento che mi sembra che sua madre fosse cristiana, o perché per esempio non è diventata buddista o confucista, insomma. E un'altra cosa, da una persona libera come lei, che porta una ventata veramente di ampiezza, di larghezza, di vedute, una cosa che veramente fa piacere, mi ha fatto piacere. A un certo punto lei ha detto però che lei è sottomessa a Dio. Allora, il Maometto è arrivato qualche secolo dopo il cristianesimo e il giudaismo, l'ebraismo, e ha fatto un po', ha unito un po' queste cose. Il cristianesimo non parla di sottomissione a Dio, perché Cristo ha reso l'uomo come Dio, cioè gli ha regalato una dignità. La sottomissione è qualcosa di sudditanza e Gesù Cristo ha portato libertà e lei che è libera va a sottomettersi. Mi sembra che sia un po' una contraddizione. Grazie.
Thank you, but I am a contradiction. I am. I was always told that I am. To me, the word submission is extremely beautiful. So we people, we tend to give the same terms different meanings. To submit to me, it's a kind of love devotion. It doesn't mean that I give up upon myself or that I don't have a free will. It's something beautiful. Like for some seconds, I try to let go of my own ego, because I have a big ego. You have to have a big ego to be a female imam. And the ego is also a driving force. You have to be ambitious. You have to want to be powerful also in order to create change. But so the submission it's a love submission. It's the same kind of submission that, you know, it's this magical moment where something happens which is so great, so it transcends everything. It's also, it happens to me also when I gave birth 4 times. It's like the ultimate submission to something which is greater than yourself. And I do believe that it's something beautiful. I don't see it as a negative word. But submission could be interpreted negatively. I know, I understand. But to me, it's a devotion, a kind of ultimate devotion. I chose to be a Muslim. It's such a difficult question, because rationally I can give you a lot of theological arguments. I do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. I believe that Jesus is a prophet, peace be upon him. Jesus is named more than 23 times in the Quran, and Jesus is the love prophet in the Quran. And you cannot be a Muslim if you do not accept the other prophets. So you have to believe in Christianity and Judaism in order to be a Muslim, and in all the prophets and in all the books. So I like the fact that we are born free, and we don't have the sin on our shoulders. I like the sense of community in Islam, and I know that this is also present in other religions and within, people who are atheists. But there's a very, all religions have their own characteristic. And I do believe that the characteristic of Islam is modesty, and it's also community. So I like the rituals, the frames, the way we do the prayer. I like the movement between unity and pluralism. This is the movement when you pray. You move. It's a mental movement between unity and pluralism. There are so many things, but when it comes to the values, we share the same values as Christian, Jews, atheists, Buddhists. So I do not believe that there are specific Islamic values. I do not believe there are specific Christian values. I do believe that there are universal values: generosity, to love your neighbor, forgiveness, mercy. All these values, I believe there are universal values shared by all people in the world. But I like the balance between the Islamic or the universal values and the Islamic rituals and the Islamic philosophy, spirituality. So I think that everything started in the heart, and I do believe that everything starts in the heart. So my journey started in my heart. Later on, I studied Islam. I had a rational approach to Islam, but it all came back to the heart, and it's the movement in the heart, and it's very difficult to explain, because what is essential cannot be said. We can only feel it. And the moment where I really know that I'm a Muslim, it's the moment when people call to prayer. It's mystical. This is where I know that I'm a Muslim. This is the path I'm on. But I'm not dogmatic. I'm not a dogmatic Muslim, so my heart is able to transform, and I do believe that in the transformation of the heart. So this is why I find spirituality very interesting, and especially Islamic spirituality. I don't know if it makes any sense, my answer. It's a very difficult question.
Direi ultima domanda da porre. Laggiù c'era un...
Grazie molte per la sua esperienza e per avercela portata qua. Grazie per la sua esperienza e per avercela portata qua. Oggi in Europa si dibatte molto sul tema del velo. Che cosa ci può dire? Perché in questo momento io vedo che appunto lei è senza velo. Che cosa un imam donna può dire su questo tema? Grazie.
I am wearing the veil. Can't you see it? This is my veil. Look at me. Thank you for the question. My point is that the veil is a metaphor for modesty. It's the symbol of modesty. And Muslim women have different interpretation of what it means to be a modest woman. This is my interpretation. My cousin, she's not a Muslim, but she has a different interpretation of modesty. All women have different interpretation of what it means to be a modest woman. And to me, this is my scarf. And the scarf also, within Islamic spirituality, it has a deeper meaning. It has the meaning of sincerity. So, to be sincere to your Creator, to be sincere to your mother, to your father, to your friends, to your sisters, to your husband, to the people you surround yourself with. So, and I do believe that we have to fight for any woman's right to carry the scarf if she chooses the scarf of her own free will. Because our job as people are not to judge each other. We are not here to judge. We are here to serve each other, to be there for each other, to support each other. So who are we to tell a woman who chose to wear a scarf that you're oppressed? Who are we to tell a woman whether the scarf is a symbol of oppression? Who are we to do that? We are not here to judge. This is the essence. And I, as an imam, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. Islamic spiritual care is essentially about not telling people what to do. It's about listening. It's about understanding. It's about meeting people where they are. If I meet a woman or a girl who is forced to wear the scarf, I will always fight for this girl or woman's right not to wear the scarf. Because fighting for women's rights, it's about fighting for the free will of that woman or girl. So I think I think that it's very simple, and everyone in this room, I mean this country, along with other European countries, along with all the countries in the world, we signed a contract. It's the Human Rights Declaration, and in that contract, it is quoted very, very clearly that any person has the right to practice his or her religion in the private sphere and in the public sphere. So, how come that our views, personal views on which symbols are suppressive, how can they overrule the Human Rights Declaration? That's a mystery to me. So this is my answer. And I do believe the way that France defines secularism is extremely problematic, because in France, they define secularism as non-religiosity. And I do not believe in that. I do believe that secularism can be defined as a dialogue between religion and politics. And religion can be an inspirational force to some people. But in the end, it's all about having the freedom to choose who you want to be. And it's not about what you wear on the head, it's about what you have inside the head. So if you force women to take off their scarves, if they're radical, they will still be radical inside their heads. So it's really silly, actually.
Bene, ringraziamo molto per questa occasione di ascoltare, di l'augurio per tutti è di aver avuto un po' la curiosità di non finire qui, perché abbiamo soltanto dato degli indizi della complessità dell'Islam, ma di andare a comprare i libri che Sherin ha citato e i libri di Sherin per cercare di avere una visione più complessa e meno superficiale possibile di questa religione maschile e femminile che è tutta europea. Grazie e buona serata a tutti.